Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Shakiel Mahjouri. You can call me Shaq here for Fansided MMA. Now listen, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, forget about it. We have the trademark main event right here. Elias, the Spartan Theodorou. How's it going, man?
Fantastic, and thank you for the plug on the best hair of
Got a
MMA.
spice? You know what? I've been wondering, why have you not just changed your nickname to the main event yet?
It's kind of creeping up in that direction. Obviously, the Spartan is something that is, the name is something that is held dear to me because my first martial arts coach is the one that gave it to me, kind of in the sense that, when I started martial arts a little later than most, and, when I was first getting into the gym and a lot of people, had a lot more, whether physicality or training on me, I never surrendered. I never gave up. So he said that I had the true Spartan mentality, and I still think I do have it. And obviously there's a very big piece of my whole being as a martial artist with that mindset. But MANE, the main event, trademark
Yep.
included, as you mentioned.
How often do you find the need to spell that out for people when you're doing video interviews like this?
Well, usually I'll at least touch the hair so they
You
understand.
should.
If not,
Yeah.
if the point goes over their head, I'll explain.
Now, you had, and I'd like to jump right into the meat of this conversation. So you had some big news that came out yesterday. I know we had to postpone this interview so we could get to it. You revealed to TSN on Wednesday that you have been working with USADA over the past many months to start
17 to be exact.
17 months. So that's almost a year and a half. To start introducing the idea of a therapeutic use exemption for medical marijuana. Now, the first thing I'd like to ask you is, when did you start using medical marijuana, and what was the ailment?
Yes. Well, I have bilateral neuropathic pain. So basically what that assesses in regards to nerve damage in certain parts of my body, my hands, and that's what it means by the bilateral. It's in my hands in different ways, but basically what that does, there's different aspects throughout the day, and sometimes it happens, randomly and not by choice, that there are, whether it's, cramps, spasms, burning sensation, or other type of, tremendous pain that I deal with throughout my day. And obviously what I do as a profession definitely exacerbates the symptoms. So for the longest time, I already knew that the first line medicines of prescription drugs, painkillers, etc., didn't work for me, or ended up having a worse side effect, and or even just adding to the side effect of the pain and discomfort that I have to deal with on a daily basis. So I've been medicating now for the better part of 2 years with my doctor's, diagnosis and also prescription. And in that time, because I'm a true believer of clean sport, I wanted to do this the right way and communicate with USADA and get the process going. And at this point where we see ourselves in obviously a historic moment for Canada, being the second country in the world not to persecute people for a plant, I felt it was timely to not only that Canada is coming out of prohibition, in many ways to come out of the dark and into the light with my own story and my own process. And obviously, we can dive into it more, but we did talk about the fact that it's been taking 17 months, and I have a whole team that now helps me, and other athletes might not be so lucky to have a team of medical practitioners or doctors that have assembled to kind of get their professional look onto the process. So I'm trying to create awareness, but also set precedents for other Canadian athletes, so it won't be as long of a wait or process for them to do it for themselves.
Now, you mentioned the wait. If you had to give me an estimate, how long do you think before we start seeing exemptions being handed out by USADA and state athletic commissions if they were to approve it?
Well, everyone's going to be on a case-by-case basis, and again, what this is for my personal medical condition, and I've gone through, as we mentioned, the long process of putting everything together. And I'm a true believer in what USADA stands for, what the World Anti-Doping Agency stands for. I believe in clean sport, and that is why I'm doing this the right way. And I really think that my story, my journey is not just for myself, it's for others. And again, others will have to take it on their own case-by-case basis with their own medical practitioner. Yeah. And from there, if cannabis is right for them, they will then be able to have a conversation with USADA on their own right.
So you don't yet have the exemption, do you?
No, but what I already have is USADA has agreed I have the ailment that I do have. They agree with my diagnosis because I've shown through different testing, different medical requirements, and whether it's an MRI, whether it's an X-ray, whether it's this, that, and the other in regards to documentation that proves that I have it. They agree that I do have the condition, that bilateral neuropathic pain. We're now at the last process, which is more about exhausting all other medicines. So first-line medicines. That's where your SRIs and your painkillers come in, your opioids and other first-line of medicines. The issue again is what those side effects do to me. And the fact that, in many ways, this is kind of a backwards approach. And this is what I would kind of say, that if anything of what I'm doing in my precedents will kind of bring it back to more of a medicine or modern medicine approach. And the idea that if your doctor, whether it's a patient who happens to be an athlete, is diagnosed and prescribed by their medical doctor. Again, this is my family doctor who's known me for my whole life. This isn't, any of the this isn't a fly-by-night conversation with a doctor. This is someone that knows me intimately in regards to as from a small child to the man I am today, and has helped me all throughout my life in regards to better empowering me as a patient, whatever it ends up being. And this so happens to be obviously now cannabis.
So you've been a human pincushion for the last little while, huh? Having to try all these different solutions.
Yes, and again, that's the issue, the side effects, whether it's Lyrica, for example, that, without giving too much detail, that would keep me constipated, bloated, and just feeling so, uncomfortable in my midsection in training. And whether it was, boxing or kickboxing or MMA and any of the, strikes, or even jiu-jitsu, like a knee on belly, when you're constipated. Yeah, you're constipated and you're hurting, and they just are able to put pressure in a place that the average person, doesn't want to feel in. The side effects alone are enough trouble. Imagine trying to be an athlete at the same time. And I think that's what if I am successful, or when I am successful, what will really help. If a doctor is prescribing this, and it is, again, someone with the history that I have had with my personal doctor for as long as I have, I think this will help other Canadian athletes to find an alternative. Again, I'm not saying that, whether it's painkillers or different types of first-line medicines or even anti-inflammatories are not necessarily right for others. It's just not right for me. And that's what I'm really trying to do, an alternative and more patient rights.
And we'll make sure when we put up a written version of this interview that there will be sources to get more information on what you are doing. But we do need to move on to some of the things you have looking forward in the MMA world. You have a big fight coming up, man, and I would argue your bout at UFC 231 in Toronto on December 8th against Eryk Anders, from a promotional standpoint, is an upgrade to your fight against Shoeface. How do you feel about Eryk Anders calling you out when he did, and why do you think he called you out?
Well, it obviously kind of says that I'm doing something right if someone wants to fight me. I think the biggest the worst thing in mixed martial arts, more specifically the sports entertainment side, is indifference. So whether someone loves me or hates me, as long as they pay attention in some capacity, I'm doing my job right. Obviously, I got the attention of Eryk Anders, and I think he called me out, as people have in the past, because I like to joke. Everyone has a plan, till they get punched in the face, is what Mike Tyson said. Yeah. But I think everyone has a plan until they face me, and more so in regards to my style and my unorthodox approach to mixed martial arts. I fought. This will be I think it will be my 19th professional fight, and it will also be the 17th time my hand is raised. But I think I've proven many times over that I'm a tough puzzle to crack, and only two people have, and I would argue only one really has, if you don't count the questionable decision in regards to Brad Tavares.
Is it nice to get this, because obviously Eryk Anders is a smooth talker, he's gotten some big headlining fights. Is it nice to have this level of star power opposite to you in the cage? Because like you said, your style has been very complicated to solve, and unfortunately your decisions in terms of judging, the judges' scorecards, probably haven't expedited you up the rankings as much as you might have liked. Is it nice to get a fight that might elevate you into a top 10 opponent next?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And obviously Carlos being 11th was at the cusp of that. But I do agree in the sense that Eryk Anders has got a lot of hype behind him. He's got a whole team behind him, or a whole following from Alabama, because he's Roll Tide is what they say. But he's got some hype behind him, and he's coming to knock my block off. But I'm going to show him the difference between chess and checkers, and kind of do much the same in regards to the aspect or the results of what happened with Thiago Santos. I'm going to break him mentally and physically.
What were your impressions of his fight against Thiago Santos? Because that is an opponent that you both share.
Well, I say that he made the same mistakes I did 2.5 years ago. So I think obviously he's athletic as hell, and he is a game opponent. But I think statistically speaking, or even technically speaking, he's kind of where I was 2-3 years ago. And he made the same mistake I did, but was unable to come to the fourth round. And I think even in that situation, I would still be fighting. When I was fighting Thiago, I got cut, but at no point did I, slow down. I wanted to go forward, even when he, was beginning to tee off on me in that same third round timing.
Can you elaborate on what these mistakes were?
He held on to the double way too long, and he got elbowed, to oblivion. And I think in many ways he kind of switched to I can't remember the technical term, but it's like limbic and something else system in regards to your brain. In the idea of your fast twitch motor skills versus your very lumbered motor skills, and he just held on to a leg. I think he was in fight or flight a lot of that fight, especially as it went on. I'll give credit where credit's due. He did show a really good first round, and he did really well in the second. I just think in the third he made similar mistakes that I did that Thiago was capitalizing on. And I just think that kind of shows where he is in his fighting versus where I've since that loss have come from. And you can't overlook the fact that he's been very active, almost to a fault at this point. The Thiago fight, it was short notice. Yes, it didn't really hurt him in regards to his quote-unquote star power, but he now has to not only fight again and prepare for another training camp, but he'll have to cut weight. Last time he didn't cut weight. So not only is he getting ready for a fight, getting ready for someone that cardio is never an issue for, and I would even say that he might use the excuse of it's a 6-day camp, yada yada yada. If I had more time to prepare, but cardio has been an issue for him for quite a bit of his fights. The only one that it wasn't would be the Machida fight, but I think that was partly because he showed. I think he was partly, not for lack of a better word, scared, but he fought scared in the sense that he was always going, he was always hunting to kind of get Machida and bring him the heat, and especially in front of a not so friendly crowd of Brazil.
You mentioned weight cutting. I saw you saying something on Twitter about how middleweight is your home. You do not expect to be jumping a light heavyweight or welterweight, but you put a little clause in there, and I'd like to ask you, what are your thoughts on the proposed 165 division? And if that were to be implemented, would you consider dropping down to a 175-pound welterweight division?
No, 175, definitely not. The only thing I would possibly think about is 195, but that would require the need for certain rules in regards to the actual percentage of weight someone can be across from it. Because the 8% that they have right now is a little, it makes sense. It's about what I am when I come in for fight week, and that ends up being 202 pounds-ish. So if, moving forward, kind of like by my numbers, that means you're nowhere bigger than 210 or whatever for 195. Then that's something I would.
So 195 is something you'd be interested in potentially.
Potentially, but okay. I still think I come in, healthy enough, hydrated enough at 185, and definitely could not go any lower.
If you come out of this fight with your hand raised, do you have anyone in mind you want to fight next? Do you think Shoeface will be behind you at that point, or is that something you'd consider moving forward?
No, definitely Shoeface. Someone I've trained for and someone I believe I can beat. And the change in opponent was a big difference in regards to going from a specialist to a generalist. Obviously, Eryk Anders is a tough opponent, but I think Carlos presents a more specific danger that is very intriguing to me. And I think I can stop his. I think he's on a 4-fight win streak, and I want to look to stop that and not necessarily be the top 10, but approach the top 10 moving forward.
There was a big Canadian star, or at least a fighter fighting out of Canada that came out of the last Bellator card, and it's someone whose name I've heard from just about any Canadian who's trained at TriStar. Man, what are your thoughts on Mandel Nalo, his performance, and his future?
He is an amazing athlete, amazing fighter. He has this instinct and this ability, and the man's flexible as hell, that no one quite knows yet, but they're obviously starting to know.
Oh, after that knockout, yeah.
That win that he had was so effortless. It was so effortless in regards to that knee, and it was so devastating. I almost want to put a sound effect of like, boop, after it, in just regards to how not intimidating or dangerous it looked, but yet the death touch he had. And he's a great guy. Love training with him, and I obviously it's funny because some of the big guys out at TriStar, whenever we're training, I'm excited to train bout. Whenever it's with him, it's always almost like, oh, I gotta really put this together. Mandel's ready, and so do I have to be. He's almost one of the people that I not that I don't look forward to train with him, but the person I almost have to be most focused, laser focused with.
Damn, well that is large praise. Final question for you before we wrap this up. Give me your thoughts on that Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell behind the scenes promo that Scardello shot, because that looked like something out of WCWs in the mid late 1900s, running on the beach.
Yes, honestly, I thought it was a throwback. I honestly thought people were throwing it back to their previous fights. It took me 3 times to watch it, and I literally was like, oh, when I literally thought this was when like the UFC Zuffa just bought the UFC. I literally thought this was a Throwback Thursday. And then the one little snippet that takes me so aback is the weird moment with Chuck in like what appears to be a hallway, and he's looking at his phone. He's like, and he almost is just as surprised as we are that they're filming him. And again, it's one thing that this is like some kind of vlog, but this is the actual promo for the event. I hope they get paid. That's all, and it comes down to. They're both legends in the sport, and all jokes aside, they're both fighters that I enjoyed fighting or enjoyed watching fight, and got me into it in some regards. I obviously, the Ultimate Fighter and that avenue and platform was something that I knew right away that I wanted to be a part of, and I didn't know how. But the UFC and Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell were instrumental in making me a fan. So I'll probably end up watching it.
I thought so. We all will. Don't believe anyone who doesn't love a train wreck. All right.
But, on that note, obviously just rounding it out. I really hope that they get paid, and I'm all for athletes having more avenues to fight. The UFC is not the only game in town. And I really want to see my fellow mixed martial artists, my fellow athletes, being able to make a living. So hope they get paid and get paid well.
Elias, thank you so much. You take on Eryk Anders at UFC 231 on December 8th in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Best of luck, man.
Thank you so much.